The outbreak of war was more than just a catastrophe, it was a blow that shattered the familiar world into a million pieces. June 22, 1941, a date that will forever remain synonymous with pain, fear, and incredible courage. The first months of the Wehrmacht invasion were a series of strategic defeats for the Red Army, and the country desperately needed resources, equipment, and, most importantly, people. While men were leaving for the front in entire echelons, the women of the Soviet Union did not remain idle. They didn't simply sew uniforms or work at machine tools, replacing their husbands and brothers. They demanded weapons. They saw that fascism meant not just occupation, but total annihilation. And they were ready to fight. Unlike Western armies, where women were typically limited to support roles, the USSR decided to make extensive use of women's potential in the most dangerous combat specialties. This wasn't a tribute to equality, it was a harsh necessity. But among all the combat specialties mastered by Soviet women, one stood out for its composure, deadly effectiveness, and psychological challenge: sniping. Why snipers? A sniper is more than just a marksman. He is a hunter, tactician, and philosopher of war all rolled into one. His job is not to shoot into the enemy's midst, but to eliminate key figures, officers, machine gunners, signalmen, and demolition experts. A sniper paralyzes battlefield control, turning an offensive into chaos. But why was this deadly instrument entrusted to young women? Natural endurance and patience. Women often demonstrated greater perseverance and the ability to wait in ambush for long periods, facilitated, for example, by a background in hunting or target shooting. Smaller silhouette. In ambush or camouflage, a woman's shorter stature and narrower silhouette provided an additional advantage. Ideological motivation. Women defending their homeland, families, and children possessed tremendous intrinsic motivation and often demonstrated less fear of death when it came to defending their homes. In 1942, when the acute shortage of personnel became critical, the decision was made to establish the Central Women's Sniper Training School, TSCHSHSP, near Moscow. This was an unprecedented step in world military history. The TSCHSHSP became a forge where former students, teachers, housewives, and athletes were transformed into deadly professionals. The students, many of whom had barely reached adulthood, entered a world where life was a mistake. The most important thing they were taught was not simply to hit the target, but to survive. The training process, not just shooting. Camouflage, the art of fusion, forget about being human. A sniper must become part of the landscape. The girls were taught to lie motionless for hours in swamps, snow, or under the scorching sun. They were drilled in creating the perfect, lying place, a camouflaged spot where they could spend a day or more. Everything about camouflage was taken care of, right down to their hair and the cleanliness of their nails, to prevent dirt from falling off. Duels and psychology. The most difficult part of being a sniper isn't technique, but psychology. Unlike a mass battle, a sniper duel is a personal confrontation. Instructors staged sniper duels with live ammunition to instill composure, patience, and the ability to analyze the enemy's behavior. The main thing is to endure and anticipate him one step at a time, they constantly repeated. Death trail and endurance. Physical training was grueling. The girls were forced to march for many kilometers with full gear. A sniper, working alone or in a pair, had to be able to carry the wounded, carry a heavy rifle, often a Mosin-Nagant rifle modified for sniper use, ammo, food, and water. Weakness meant death. Particular attention was paid to working in pairs, sniper and observer. This was the ideal hunting machine. The observer monitored the situation, calculated wind and range adjustments, and the sniper made a precise shot. Success depended on absolute trust and complete understanding of each other. Before the opening of the Central Women's School of Snipers, the first female snipers had already achieved fame at the front. The most famous of them was Lyudmila Pavlichenko, a legend who became the embodiment of female strength in the Red Army. Lyudmila, a student from Kiev, was a keen marksman before the war. She volunteered for the front. In the battles for Odessa and Sevastopol, her kill tally mounted at a rate that frightened the Germans. One of the highlights of her biography is her famous sniper duels. Pavlichenko didn't just shoot, she waged an intellectual war against the Wehrmacht's most experienced snipers. She could lie in one position for hours, feigning injury or death to lure the enemy out. In one interview, she recalled how, during a duel that lasted 3 days, she defeated a German ace, who at the time had a high score of his own. By the time of her injury and evacuation, Pavlichenko had 309 confirmed kills of enemy soldiers and officers. This figure staggered the imagination and made her an international star. She was sent to the United States and Canada, where she met with President Roosevelt and inspired the Western Allies. It was precisely such stories that created the myth of Soviet female snipers in the eyes of the Wehrmacht, a myth that inspired terror. German soldiers feared them not only for their marksmanship, but also because, in their view, they violated all the laws of traditional warfare. They called them invisible horror, or witches. By 1943, graduates of the Central Women's Sniper Training School, CWSTS, began arriving at the front lines en masse, from the Belarusian forests to the Baltics and Ukraine. Unlike male snipers, who were often experienced hunters or sportsmen, these women carried not only Mosin rifles with PU optics, universal sights, but also a heavy burden of idealistic expectations that often shattered against the reality of the front. The first days were the most difficult. The front is not a pure shooting range, it is a mixture of mud, blood, the constant noise of artillery, and, most importantly, unpredictability. Many of them, upon arriving at their units, were met with mistrust. Male officers, raised in patriarchal traditions, doubted their combat effectiveness. They viewed the women either as a nuisance or as expendable. Female snipers had to earn respect not with words, but with the speed and accuracy of their hits. Maria Polivanova and Natalia Kovshova, these two friends, working as a pair, became a symbol of unwavering determination. They proved that a female sniper duo could be twice as effective as a solo sniper. Their tactics involved firing from different angles, confusing the enemy. They were responsible for dozens of German kills, including high-ranking officers. Their lives ended tragically. In August 1942, surrounded in the Novgorod region, they allowed the enemy to close in and then blew themselves and the Germans up with their last grenades. Their heroic deed immediately became a model for all subsequent graduating classes of the Central Women's Sniper School. At the front, sniper training acquired its true, rigorous form. The girls quickly learned that a sniper's main enemy is not the target, but giving oneself away. A sniper's shot reveals his location, and he has only a few seconds to disappear before German artillery or a return sniper starts working on that spot. Their survival depended on strict adherence to the 5 rules of prone position. Choosing a prone position, a sniper never chose the most convenient location. The ideal position was difficult to find and easy to escape from. Often, these were swamps, shell craters, or ruins, requiring incredible physical endurance. Concealment by terrain, every detail mattered. In winter, white camouflage suits and snowdrifts. In summer, branches, mud, and grass sewn into clothing. Even breathing required care so that the vapor wouldn't give away the position. False targets. Clever snipers constantly created distractions, simulating a shot in one place, for example, using a rope tied to a rifle left in the old position, and instantly crawling to a new, true position. Weapon change. Search a sniper rifle was practically part of the body. Crawling was a slow, agonizing process, sometimes lasting hours. They carried their rifles in front of them, never lifting them from the ground. Psychological discipline. Waiting. This was the hardest part. Hours of absolute stillness, fighting the cold, insects, thirst, and inner fear. The sniper had to maintain a cool head for a single, precise shot. Unlike fighting in a trench, where the sense of community drowns out fear, sniper work is solitude and extreme responsibility. Each shot is a personal kill, committed in cold blood, after a long stalk. This aspect placed an enormous psychological burden on the girls. Most of them were very young, and the contrast between their pre-war lives and the new reality was shocking. Many snipers recalled that the very first enemy they killed remained etched in their memory. Rosa Shanina is one of the most striking examples. A fragile young woman with incredible marksmanship, she kept a diary in which she openly wrote about her fears, doubts, and the psychological toll war was taking on her. She wrote of seeing the enemy's eyes in the sights and the strain of pulling the trigger. Her record was impressive, but her inner conflict was even greater. She was one of the few who begged her command to allow her to participate in open combat to escape this unbearable loneliness and personal responsibility. Her tragic death in East Prussia became another symbol of sacrifice. The German command quickly recognized the threat posed by Soviet female snipers. In reports and intercepted communications, they referred to them as Russian Amazons, and hunting them became a priority. Large rewards were promised for every killed Soviet sniper. Thus, the women had to fight not only against their target, but also against a deliberate, deadly hunt. At the front, snipers' work often boiled down to a kind of survival chess game, sniper duels. These weren't random firefights, but rather a deliberate hunt between two professionals. The Germans, with their excellent marksmen and high-quality rifles, for example, the Mauser K98K with Zeiss optics, sent their best aces to neutralize Soviet sniper positions. But they were confronted by women who possessed not only excellent marksmanship but also phenomenal patience and cunning. Duel example, Zinovia, Zina, Drapkina. In her memoirs, Zina Drapkina, later Zubkova, recounted a classic example of a sniper duel. Her opponent was cunning and obviously experienced. He used a small mirror to catch a ray of sunlight and check for a glare from the Soviet optics, then quickly hid. He also used decoys, mannequins wearing helmets. Zina's tactics were simple but effective. Wait until the enemy began to doubt her presence. She remained prone for over a day, without moving. Finally, a German sniper, believing the Russian girl had either frozen or escaped, carelessly peeked out from cover to change position. That brief moment was decisive. Zina, without hesitation, fired a single, accurate shot. A successful outcome of such duels not only boosted her personal score but also dramatically boosted the morale of the Soviet soldiers in that sector. The role of female snipers extended far beyond the elimination of manpower. They became a psychological weapon and a strategic deterrent. Paralysis of command, the primary target was not rank-and-file soldiers, but officers. The elimination of a battalion commander, company commander, or even a platoon commander instantly led to the disorganization of an attack or defense. If the Germans knew an ace sniper was operating in a given area, they stopped using binoculars, moved in pairs, and avoided open spaces. Supply disruption, the women often targeted rear-line targets within their line of sight, ammunition truck drivers, cooks delivering food to the front, or signalers pulling cable. This directly undermined the enemy's combat effectiveness. Invisible terror, the presence of an unseen sniper had a demoralizing effect on German soldiers. They knew that any careless move could be their last, turning movement along the front into a nervous ordeal. Evgenia Makarova and other expert snipers were often tasked with terrorizing German positions. They would fire one shot, quickly change position, and fire a second shot an hour later from a completely different location, creating the impression that an entire group was working against them. Evgenia Makarova and other expert snipers were often tasked with terrorizing German positions. They could fire one shot, quickly change positions, and fire a second shot an hour later from a completely different location, creating the impression that an entire group was working against them. Although the main reward was survival, the official sniper scores of Red Army women are astounding. Ludmila Pavlichenko, 309 targets destroyed. Highest score among female snipers in the world. Hero of the Soviet Union. Elizaveta Mironova, 100+ targets destroyed. Actively fought in the battle for Novorossiysk and was distinguished by exceptional composure. Natalia Kovshova, 167 targets destroyed. Posthumously, Hero of the Soviet Union. She died in battle along with a friend. Rosa Shanina, 59 targets destroyed. The invisible horror of East Prussia. The only ones authorized to conduct sniper fire on the run. These numbers weren't just statistics, they were combat biographies, each representing hundreds of Soviet soldiers saved through the preemptive elimination of machine gun crews and officers. By the end of the war, the contribution of female snipers to the common cause was undeniable. From distrust and skepticism in 1942 to respect and admiration in 1945, many of the surviving girls were awarded orders and medals, and their names became part of Red Army legend. By the spring of 1945, many graduates of the Central Women's School of Snipers had reached Berlin. They were among those who witnessed the collapse of the fascist machine, whose destruction they had so deadly contributed to. The war was over, but for the snipers, it didn't end abruptly. The end of hostilities meant not only the long-awaited victory, but also the need to return to the world they had left so young, and which now completely did not correspond to their new, frontline experience. The losses among female snipers were enormous. Working alone or in pairs, they often found themselves in the epicenter of enemy attention. Those who survived bore a tremendous burden, physical wounds, but even more severe psychological trauma. They witnessed the war in the most personal, most horrific details, and they struggled to readapt to civilian life. After Victory Day, many women who had received military awards and titles faced a dual reality: official recognition, they were heroes of the Soviet Union, recipients of the Order of Glory. Hidden condemnation, in post-war society, there was a long-standing unspoken stereotype that a woman's real place was not on the front lines. Many were forced to hide their frontline sniper experiences for years to avoid judgmental glances or unwanted questions. Their fates unfolded differently. Profession and family, most sought to return to their interrupted plans. Female students returned to college, and female teachers to schools. For example, Nina Petrova, who died before the end of the war, but was a shining example, served as a shooting instructor in peacetime and would have returned to her beloved profession. Rosa Shahina, who died at 20, left behind diaries that became an invaluable testimony to the tragedy of her generation. The struggle with memory, many could not shake off the frontline soldier syndrome. Constant readiness for danger, an inability to relax, nightmares, all this was the price of maintaining composure at the front. In their memoirs, they rarely mentioned the number of dead. Much more often, they recalled the moments when they had to shoot a man point blank, seeing his face. Preserving history, over time, thanks to figures like Svetlana Alexievich and her book, The Unwomanly Face of War, the stories of female snipers began to emerge from the shadows. Veterans themselves began to speak out about their experiences so that future generations would understand the true price of peace. They became living witnesses, whose mission was no longer to kill, but to warn. The female snipers of the Red Army left behind a priceless and unique legacy. Their story is more than just a tale of marksmanship. It is a hymn to the human spirit that refuses to surrender in the face of total annihilation. They proved that in the fight for the motherland, there are no gender differences, only devotion, courage, and professionalism. They became not just soldiers, but symbols of the resilience of the entire Soviet people. For the Lest We Remember channel, their stories are the foundation. Their experience teaches us that war is always a personal tragedy, where heroic deeds are performed not in the name of abstract ideas, but to preserve family, home, and the future. Today, when we look at the photographs of these girls, young, determined, but forever marked by war, we must remember them not as faceless, combat units, but as Rosa, Ludmila, Natasha, and Maria. Each of them made her own choice, to take up a rifle to stop evil, and to pay for it with her peace and youth. They fulfilled their duty so that we have the right to peace. And our duty, as the name of our channel proclaims, lest we remember.